It's the 2025-2026 FAFSA season. Now, most students won't be able to complete the FAFSA until December. We're gonna walk through the application, but keep in mind, there haven't been that many changes. Now, some changes might occur between now and when the release happens, because right now the U.S. Department of Education is doing a beta test. But let's go through some of the questions you'll see, how the application works, to hopefully ease some of those fears or concerns you have regarding the FAFSA. You need to go to www.studentaid.gov, and from that homepage, you'll notice that there is a drop-down for the FAFSA form. You're going to click on Complete the FAFSA once that menu is open, and it'll bring you to a page to log in. Like I said, the application isn't available for most, but this is just where you would find it. And once it's open by December 1st, this is where you can log in. Essentially, you'll be greeted with the ability to put in your username and password. Since this is a demo and it's only for demonstration purposes only, we're going to be using an account that already has some information pre-populated and some information that we can input. But we'll go through what's pre-populated for everyone and what will be input. In order to log in, you will be using your FSA ID, username, and password. This also gives you the option to use email and phone, but if you do have an FSA ID, you do want to log in that way. If you forget your username or your password because you haven't done this since last year, you have the ability to do that here. If you don't have an FSA ID, you can click and create an account. If you've never completed the FAFSA online before, you might need to create an account, and you can do that out here. So this is going to bring you to create your own FSA ID, which is that username and password you will use. Now it's time to complete the FAFSA. You have the option to start a new 2025-2026 FAFSA form, and you would click this button here. Or if you were invited to provide information on a FAFSA application, you have the ability to click that here to edit existing forms. Today, we're going to be running through what it looks like to complete a FAFSA from the start. So we're going to be clicking here, start a new form. It's going to welcome you, and then it's going to ask you, are you the student or the parent completing the application? The reason this is an option here is parents, you can get started on behalf of your student or students, your children, and you can begin the application for them. But right now, we are going to do this from the point of view of a student. Throughout the years, the online application has been working to improve every single time. These really helpful short videos will give you some information about what the FAFSA is and why it's important. If this is your first time ever completing the FAFSA and you're a bit apprehensive, I recommend reviewing these videos. They're not very long, they're relatively short, and it gives you an idea of what the FAFSA is and why it's so important. Once you review the video, you can hit continue. And now it's going to go over what a FAFSA contributor is. The idea of the FAFSA contributor is a relatively new one. It was introduced in the 2024-2025 year. So in prior years, we were more concerned about FAFSA parents and FAFSA parents providing their information on the form. And there were ways in those applications that maybe the student could complete the information for the parent, or if more than one parent had to provide information, then one parent could complete it. That is still the case today. Now the term has been changed to FAFSA contributor. This also covers the situation where the student is married and you'd be providing information on a spouse. In addition, if the student's parents are not together and the FAFSA parent is remarried, that spouse may be also considered a FAFSA contributor. It boils down to how you filed your taxes. The FAFSA will provide you information and details about who needs to provide information on your FAFSA. If your parents are not together, typically that's the hardest question to answer, is who would I provide information for? So this is what you're going to look at about what type of documents you'll need. If you're confused about who your FAFSA parent is or who needs to be a FAFSA contributor, I recommend reviewing the video. Chances are this will be updated on the new FAFSA to match the 2025-2026 year. You'll also notice on this page, it lets you know how you will invite a FAFSA contributor to provide information on your FAFSA application. And once you review that information, go ahead and hit continue. The FAFSA is expected to take 1 hour. To be honest with you, actual sit-down time to complete the application, it has been faster for most families. It's been faster for most students. However, that doesn't mean if you do take an hour or more, something is wrong. That just means your situation maybe requires a little bit more attention than some of the other applicants. Most applicants will find that it only takes about 15 to 20 minutes to complete their own section. And then once the information is passed on to a contributor, it might take them 15 to 20 minutes to complete their own section. But it all kind of depends on your situation. Like I said, if it takes you the full hour, that's okay. Others who it's taking 15 to 20 minutes, that's okay as well. The amount of time that it takes you to complete isn't necessarily an indicator that something went wrong. You're gonna hit continue. And the FAFSA actually wants you to take a second to understand what will happen once you complete the FAFSA or once you submit it. It's a little bit confusing if this is the first time you're handling a FAFSA application. And what I mean by that is that this is the application for financial aid. However, you will not technically receive your actual awards. However, you will not receive your actual financial aid packages or your financial aid awards after you complete the FAFSA application. What you will get is an SAI. That's your student aid index. And that's an index number that will be used by the schools where you're applying that will determine your financial aid packages and awards. One of the top questions that we get after a FAFSA is submitted is, where's my financial aid? What will happen is your school will create that financial aid package. They'll let you know, and closer to your start date of your academic term is when you will see that financial aid. Your school will have most of the funds deposited directly into your account with the school. After they take what you owe them, whatever's left over can be issued to you in what's known as a credit balance refund. But like I said, December 1st is a long ways away from an August 2025 start date. You will get some information after the FAFSA is processed in just a few days, like your student aid index, but your financial aid awards or your financial aid packages will come from your school in a few months. So that's just jumping in to some of the information you should be aware of and how the application works. And then it's going to take you to the FAFSA form. So you're going to click on Start the FAFSA form. The first section is going to be the student identity information. And what you're seeing here is a lot of information that's already pre-populated. The reason this is pre-populated is because you used your FSA ID to log in. Your FSA ID has this information already, so it's automatically transferred to your FAFSA application. You're going to see your mailing address. You just want to confirm your information is correct. The top section here, you'll notice that you'll get a note to where you can update your account settings where this information is found. Below is your permanent mailing address, and you want to ensure that this is up to date and correct. It will pull in what information it has, but if you need to make changes or update it, it's very important to update this here. If you're receiving any correspondence by mail regarding your FAFSA or your financial aid, you want to make sure you receive it. So just make sure that your permanent mailing address is up to date and correct. Next, you're going to look at your state of legal residence. This is typically more important for different types of state aids, different types of state financial aid, because they'll determine your eligibility or your in-state eligibility for different types of programs. Your school might also use this. If they have in-state tuition rates and out-of-state tuition rates, they're going to be looking to see what state you are a legal resident of to determine how they can apply that to your account, if they can. Each state has its own rules of residency, so if you have any questions about that, ask your financial aid office if for some reason you were expecting in-state tuition prices and you got out-of-state tuition prices. It could be a situation where you weren't considered a legal resident long enough in order to qualify. So we're going to put in just some demonstration figures only. You only have to list month and year. You don't necessarily have to list the date. So now we're going to go into the federal tax information section. In the 2024-2025 year, this was introduced, and it will be continuing into the 2025-2026 year. Unlike previous years where you could have your federal tax information transferred from the IRS using the data retrieval tool as an option, it's no longer an option. If you do not approve consent to have your information transferred over from the IRS, you will not be eligible for federal student aid. That does not mean that you won't be eligible for maybe different types of state aid or school aid, but as far as federal student aid, you will become ineligible. Even if you are required to provide income information on the 2025-2026 FAFSA, and for whatever reason you aren't eligible to have your information transferred, you still need to provide consent. If you are a FAFSA contributor for a student, you also need to provide consent for your student who you're providing information for to be eligible for federal student aid. These are the rules, and they go on to explain a little bit more about the reasoning behind it and what you're agreeing to here. It will tell you once again in this option 5, if you do not consent, the U.S. Department of Education or ED will be unable to calculate your eligibility and you will not be eligible for federal aid, but make sure to read the disclaimer and how it works. Then you'll also be presented with an FAQ. The FAQ will also provide more detail, and here you can see there is information about spouse and others who might need to provide consent. So we're going to hit approve because we would like to continue. It's going to take just a few seconds for the information to be transferred over, and then you'll get a notice that it was successfully pulled in. Any federal tax information transferred into the application will not be visible to you at the time of completing this application. And if you do want to view the information input to the form, you can make a request to view your own information. If you have a FAFSA contributor, you will not be able to request their information. The FAFSA contributor must be the one to make the request to see their own information. As the student, the information stays private to you, and as a FAFSA contributor, the information also stays private to you. No one can take a look at it, and no one else can request it except you. It's just a secure way of doing that. But when completing the FAFSA, you might be concerned about what's being imported in there. You can work with the financial aid office later if you think there's any mistakes or issues with what was pulled in. Now, the FAFSA is going to go over some personal circumstances. The number one piece of advice I have for everyone completing the FAFSA is ensure you're reading each information section presented to you. I understand that it's easy to fly through it, especially if you have done it in years past. Even if something is similar, it may not be the same, and you don't want to miss anything important. There's some really helpful information here that not only will apply to you completing this application today, but could have implications in the future. For example, if you sped right by the federal tax information and declined and didn't provide consent, you might be unaware as you're completing the application that you will not be receiving federal student aid and trying to troubleshoot that later. So just take some time and read through each question carefully or any page presenting you with information. The next question is going to be students' current marital status. So if you're filing the application today, you are answering based on your marital status as of today. If you were engaged to be married in 6 months, the answer is still single because it's based on today, not what is happening in 6 months. And the other way around, if you are currently married and you know that you and your partner have decided to split or separate or divorce, you would answer the question based on your situation as of today and not what is happening in the future. For this particular situation, we are going to answer as single, never married. The next question is going to be, what are your college plans? At the start of the 2025-2026 school year, what will your grade level be? So this is not as of today. This is as of the start of your program. The 2025-2026 school year is July 1, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. Answer the question appropriately. For this particular demonstration, we're gonna answer as a first-year freshman. And then the next question is going to be, when the student begins the 2025-2026 school year, will they have their first bachelor's degree? You might be wondering why they're asking this question. Well, you can get more than one undergraduate degree. Some students may be coming back after completing a bachelor's degree in order to get different type of training or different type of credential that they need. And the federal Pell Grants are limited to your first bachelor's degree. So if you already have a bachelor's degree and you click yes, there will be certain types of financial aid that you will not be eligible for. For this demonstration, we're going to select no, then click continue. Now, more personal circumstances. What we're reading here is what are known as dependency status questions. For an undergraduate student, it's important to determine if they're considered a dependent undergraduate student or an independent graduate student. This dependency status is used for FAFSA purposes only. This has nothing to do with dependence on your taxes or if someone claims you as a dependent on their taxes. This is strictly for FAFSA purposes only. What you're going to do here is select anything that applies to you. Answering these questions will determine your dependency status. For the most part, we are going to run this demonstration as a dependent undergraduate student, and I know that clicking any of these boxes will automatically qualify me for it as an independent student. For this demonstration, we're going to remain a dependent undergraduate student. Remember, you need to be honest on the FAFSA. The FAFSA is a federal application. You want to answer truthfully and honestly. If you were to knowingly mislead on the application to attempt to qualify for additional financial aid, there could be consequences. You cannot lie on a federal form or a federal application and expect to not have any consequences if you were to be caught. So make sure when you read this that you're determining that you're answering it honestly. And then click continue. There's going to be an additional question to help determine your dependency status, and that's going to be student homelessness. And you want to read the question carefully to see if it applies to you. In this demo, we are not going to have this situation apply. So the difference between a dependent undergraduate student and an independent undergraduate student. A dependent undergraduate student is typically required to provide parental information on their FAFSA application. If they are under the age of 24, you might have noticed that the online application did not ask me my date of birth or how old I was because that information has already been input. Your date of birth, if you saw at the first page of the student information, was already pulled over. So the system already knows if you're under the age of 24 or not. So that's why we saw those questions. If you are over the age of 24, you might not see any of those questions because the system has already determined you're an independent student. Independent students are all graduate and professional students and certain undergraduate students who meet different types of criteria. Now, if you are considered a dependent undergraduate student because you answered those questions truthfully and you still have a special circumstance that you will not be able to provide your parents information, this is the page that will help the school determine a special circumstance of maybe being able to do a dependency override or professional judgment to offer you additional financial aid. So what you're going to do here is look at the student unusual circumstance and see if any of these apply to you. There are certain protections that the FAFSA wanted to account for, such as the requirement of providing parent information could put you in a life-threatening or a violent situation. They don't necessarily want you contacting your parents for the FAFSA, but you would have to answer here and then work with your financial aid office to further complete your application. You will be able to proceed, but there might be different types of information that you need to provide separately with your financial aid office to complete your application. For this demonstration, we're going to select no. So this is another situation. So if you don't have one of the situations that were listed before, the reason that you're unable to contact your parents due to one of those more serious issues. If you have a parent who is refusing to provide information on the FAFSA, that doesn't prevent you from completing the FAFSA, but it will remove your ability to be given or provided any federal student aid other than unsubsidized student loans. If your parent is not going to provide you information and they are adamant that they will not be providing their information on your FAFSA, you can select yes. Once you select yes, the application will allow you to continue, but will require additional actions for your financial aid office to help process your application all the way through. You will no longer be eligible for federal Pell Grants and most types of other federal student aid. The only type of aid you will be eligible for is a federal direct unsubsidized loan. Once you make your selection, you're going to hit continue. Since Raya, the student that we're completing the application for, is a dependent undergraduate student, that's how we've answered the questions, it's going to help us determine who the FAFSA parent is. If your parents are not married to each other, you can select no. Another question will pop up that asks you, do your parents live together? You can click yes, and then it'll tell you provide information for both parents. If you select no, it will ask you additional questions to determine who was your FAFSA parent. The next question is going to be, did one parent provide more financial support than the other over the past 12 months? If you completed the FAFSA pre-2024-2025, you might have recalled that the first question asked was, who did you live with the majority of the time over the past 12 months? That is no longer the first question or obstacle to determine your first parent. You have the option to click yes, and then it'll present you with another question. If you clicked no, it presents you with a question as well. So for yes, has the parent you identified in this previous question remarried? So this is essentially asking the parent who provided you most financial support, are they married to someone who is not your other parent? And then you could say yes or no, depending on and here it'll let you know who your FAFSA contributors are. If you select no, did one parent provide more financial support than the other parent over the last 12 months? It's going to ask you to identify the parent who has the greater income or assets in the next question. And this is one of those situations you really want to ensure you are reading the information being presented to you. You'll notice here that it gives you very specific instructions on what to do next. So if you did not have one parent who provided you with more financial support over the past 12 months, it's going to ask you to refer to the parent with a greater income and assets in the next question. And that parent, it's going to ask you, has the parent you identified in the previous question remarried? You can select yes or no here. If you select yes, it will tell you to provide information for your parent and your step-parent. If you select no, it will be asking you for information on this parent only. For this particular demonstration, we are going to say that this parent is not remarried. We're going to hit continue. So now you have the opportunity to invite your parent to complete the FAFSA form on your behalf. Since you, the student, started the application, you would go ahead and provide the information of your parent to have an application sent to them. So what you're going to do here is type in parent's first name and your parent's last name. You're going to type in your parent's date of birth. You're going to type in your parent's social security number. And if your parent doesn't have a social security number, you can check this box and provide the information it is asking for. In this case, we're going to say our parent does have a social security number and fill that in. Now you're going to be providing your parent's email address and just confirming that you typed it in correctly. Ensure that the information you're using matches their FSA ID account exactly. And by exactly, I mean exactly. Their first name is spelled correctly. Their last name is spelled correctly. Date of birth, social, and their email address is the email address associated with their FSA ID. Now, if your parent needs to provide information on your FAFSA, they are required to have an FSA ID as well. There are some situations where this may not be as simple. Like, for example, your parent does not have a social security number. But here is there is guidance and a workaround available for students in that situation. This was a major issue in the 2024-2025 FAFSA, and there have been some recommendations made for workarounds or fixes for the 2025-2026. but we haven't seen how the application works this year to see if all the issues have been resolved. So you're gonna go ahead and send the invite and then hit continue. So we're gonna go into some demographic questions. Make sure, once again, to read all the information being presented to you and hit continue. These demographic questions presented here will not affect your financial aid or your federal student aid eligibility, but it is requested to provide the information if you feel comfortable. So you can go ahead and make your selections here. You do have the option of prefer not to answer. Once again, this race and ethnicity question, you have the ability to prefer not to answer if you don't feel comfortable, or you can select the answers which apply. Here, same thing with race, but if you don't feel comfortable, you can prefer not to answer as well. It won't affect your eligibility for anything. This is information used for research purposes only. Now you're going to select your citizenship status. There is a financial aid eligibility requirement to be a U.S. citizen or national, or an eligible non-citizen. If you don't meet either criteria, but you've been asked to complete the FAFSA anyways, you can go ahead and choose that answer. But chances are you will not be eligible for federal student aid. For this demonstration, we're going to choose U.S. citizen or national, but keep in mind, eligible non-citizen, you may be required to provide an A number. And if this applies to you, you likely know what that means. Then you're going to click continue. Now you're going to answer some questions about your parents' education status. So answer based on what is the correct answer. There's also going to be a question if your parent was killed in the line of duty. You're going to answer this question if it applies to you. The answer to this question could qualify you for additional financial aid, and that financial aid may be offered to you regardless of your financial situation. For this demonstration, we're going to select no. The student high school completion status. So at the start of the 2025-2026 year, you need to identify if you'll have a high school diploma, essentially a GED, if you're homeschooled, or none of the above. If none of the above is selected, you may be limited on your financial aid eligibility unless you meet certain criteria or meet the ability to benefit, which is a very specific situation. For this demo, we are going to select high school diploma. As we know, the majority of students have a high school diploma or the equivalent of a GED. Now you're actually going to choose which high school you attended. Remember, we were from the great state of New York. And this is really great because you can start typing in some keywords to help you find your high school, but it'll help you find the high school where you attended. So once you pick your state and city, you can start typing in some of the information about your high school, and it should pop up in a list when you hit search, and then you can choose it here. If for some reason your school is not listed, you can add it manually, but just ensure you are correctly inputting your high school and you're typing it correctly. Then you're going to confirm here that this is the high school you attended. Remember, if you accidentally choose a different state or city, another state or city may have a high school with a similar name to yours, so just confirm the information is correct. Having a high school diploma or equivalent, or having the ability to benefit, are financial aid requirements in order to qualify for financial aid. If you do not have these credentials, you may be required to complete the equivalent of a high school diploma before you are eligible for federal student aid. There are a lot of credible programs out there to get a GED, and make sure you're choosing a credible program. If there's a program saying that you can pay money and just get a high school diploma without doing any work, chances are that is a scam, and you would be paying for something you can't even use, and could be considered fraudulent as well. So make sure, if you do not have a high school diploma, that you're taking the right steps in order to get the equivalent of that in order to qualify for federal student aid. In the finance section, make sure to click any links for any additional information to see if anything applies to you, especially if you're concerned about certain types of information that you'll have to provide. You don't want to miss any of those important tips that might apply to you later. All right, so you're going to go ahead and provide the answers to these questions. Remember, you are the student. You are the one who owns the FAFSA application. Your FAFSA contributor is required to input their own information. So do not answer information based on your FAFSA contributor. You, the student who's identified here, you are the owner of this application, and this is the information it's asking of you, not your parents, of you specifically. If you have an IRA or other type of account, go ahead and put the value there. If you don't know the value or you don't have one, leaving it blank is going to create an error. You actually do have to enter a 0. Throughout the years, this has been required for certain questions and not others. And these are the important bits of information you don't want to miss so you avoid any errors or any issues. This student here is putting in some information on their tax returns. These situations for this demonstration do not apply to this student, so we're going to go ahead and add 0. But if this does apply to you, or you have any of these accounts or any sort of foreign earned income exclusion, go ahead and put in the correct information here as you're going through. Now we're going to look at assets. It's going to ask you for current total of cash savings or checking account. Remember, current is a word they're using to ask what the totals are as of today. What they're literally looking for here is the balance of any of your accounts that you have. If you're a high school student, you might typically have a saving or checking account with a bank. Just log in and put in a number that applies to you. If you have nothing in there or you don't have a bank account, you can go ahead and put 0. If you have any investments or real estate, you can go ahead and put in the net worth. The net worth is described here for you as well. Your FAFSA contributor is going to be seeing similar questions, but once again, we're talking about the student's information, and the student who's identified at the top of the question is the one who's providing the answers. And then current net worth of business and investment farms. Small businesses and any small businesses or family-owned businesses with 100 full-time employees or less is no longer an exemption on the FAFSA. So you're going to go ahead and put in any net worth here. Now you're going to get to your school list. Your FAFSA school list are all the schools you would like to receive your FAFSA information. This information will be sent to your schools, and your school is the one who will create a financial aid package or a financial aid award in order for you to attend their school. Each school is likely going to offer you something different. While the federal aid may be similar or the same at all the schools, you may notice state aid or institutional aid from your school, to be a little bit different at each school. You have the ability to list up to 20 schools at one time. You do not need to know where you're going yet. You can actually complete this before you know where you're going. You do not need to know if you've been accepted yet either. You can go ahead and just put the information in here. So you're going to go ahead and pick a school. We've lived in New York our whole lives. Let's look for some schools in California. Once again, this is a demonstration. These aren't true school codes and these aren't true school locations. But let's go ahead and pick some schools that are available on this list for this demonstration so you can see how it works. So you're going to select, and once again, you can select up to 20 schools. Complete the application with all 20 if you're applying to more than 20 schools. Submit it, wait for it to process, get confirmation from your schools that they received your information. And at that point, you can come back in, edit your FAFSA form, and update the school list to add more schools. If you're applying to more than 20 schools, if you didn't apply to all 20 schools, but you added a school to your list later, you can always come back in and edit that school list to add that school. We added some schools, so now we're going to click Continue. It's going to list the information here about each school, and you can see some of the information about the school. It'll provide you with some high-level key information about the school, some of the cost, retention rates, graduation rates, transfer rates, and median debt. So that's really helpful as well. You go previous once you are done and hit continue. So you can see that for every school on there just by viewing their information. Now you're going to review your FAFSA responses. You can expand them all. I suggest expanding them all from the beginning, instead of checking each section one by one and maybe skipping one. You want to confirm the information that you provided on your FAFSA is correct and complete. So you're going to go through and get all the questions and answers that you put into the form. Remember, this is a demonstration only, so this particular prototype may not be completely accurate to what we put in, but that's okay for this. When it comes to your application, make sure the information is correct. And here it's going to let you know who your contributor is and also give you the ability to manage your contributor if you need to change any of the information you put on there. It might be best to just run the information by your FAFSA contributor one more time to ensure that information is correct and that they get the invite in their email to be able to provide the information on your FAFSA. Then you're going to click Continue. Signing and completing your FAFSA. This is what you're agreeing to when you submit this FAFSA application. Remember, you want to be honest, you want to be truthful. It is a federal form and there are consequences. If you are found to have lied or knowingly misled the government or any school when you completed this application, you may be subject to a criminal penalty of up to $20,000 or imprisonment. So those are some serious consequences. And at the very end, you agree to the terms and outlined above. I don't want to scare you with mistakes. People make mistakes. Making a mistake is far different than purposefully misleading or providing fraudulent information in order to get more money. Making a mistake, mistakes can be fixed and you can work with your school to work through them. If you make a mistake anywhere on this FAFSA application, you wouldn't be the first one, but have it be an honest mistake. Some of the questions can be worded differently. You might be confused about what it was asking, but we can always, those types of errors can be fixed. And as we saw with last year, sometimes the errors aren't even from your end. The errors could happen in some glitch or issues with the FAFSA application. This year, we hope it to be a far smoother process and for many students and parents to avoid those issues, but we'll have to wait and see how the 2025-2026 FAFSA cycle goes. Once you agree to the terms, you can go ahead and click Sign. And then you're almost there. This is going to be a bit of your information here about your FAFSA, what you can do next, things you should know. It'll give you an idea of the status. Here you can also check on your FAFSA contributor status. Especially if you're not located close to your FAFSA contributor, you can check on the status of where they are with completing your FAFSA. And you can work with them or nudge them kindly to get their section complete. Whoever is listed as a FAFSA contributor and is invited to complete information on a FAFSA, this is the email that they will get. And it'll give them information about who is asking for information, and it'll be very clear, without your input, your child may not be able to receive federal student aid. It gives you some helpful nudges of why it's a good idea to do this as soon as possible so that you don't miss any deadlines or miss out on any financial aid. From here, you can go ahead and log in. This is pre-populated, but you might be required to at least put in your password if your FSA ID wasn't already placed in the application. It's going to remind you who is asking for information. This could be helpful, especially if you have more than one child, to determine who is sending you the information. Also, if you're a parent who is remarried, you might be a FAFSA contributor on your spouse's child, on your stepchild. So it's helpful to see what is being asked of you. So you can go ahead and accept the invitation. And here it says, by accepting, you are agreeing to share your information. As a parent contributor, it's going to give you some information and helpful tools on what's expected of you as the FAFSA parent or a contributor, or a FAFSA contributor. You can go ahead and review, expand the answers to these questions to help you understand what to expect. You're going to get some of the same helpful videos up front. I do recommend viewing them to give you an idea of what to expect, especially if it's your first time completing the FAFSA for somebody else. This is going to give you some information on total time it expects for you to take to complete it and what will happen after the FAFSA form is submitted. You can go ahead and start the FAFSA. So as the parent, same thing as the student. The information above has been pulled directly from your FSA ID account. If you need to make any updates to that, information, you have to go to your account settings. And then you want to confirm that your permanent mailing address is correct and hit continue. This is going to be the federal tax information consent page. If you are identified as a FAFSA contributor for a student, consent to allow the IRS to transfer your information to the U.S. Department of Education into this FAFSA application. If you do not provide consent, the student will not be eligible for any federal student aid. That's going to be explained here as well. Even if for some reason you provide consent and the information cannot be transferred and you have to manually input the information, you still are required to provide consent. It will securely import your information. Now you're going to go through a list of parent demographic information. What you'll notice at the very top is it no longer says student, it says parent. And as the parent, you are now required to provide information. So now go ahead and provide information based on you. We're going to say this particular situation, you are a divorced parent. It's going to ask you for your state of legal residence. Go ahead and answer the question appropriately. And then it's going to go into finances. As a parent, you will see a bit more technical questions compared to the dependent undergraduate student. You're going to go ahead and answer these questions appropriately based on how they're asked. For this particular question, you're looking at anytime during 2023 or 2024, did the parent or anyone in the family receive any benefits from these specific programs? And answer these questions honestly. For this demonstration, we are going to choose that none of these apply. You can go ahead and hit continue. You're going to be asked family size. The FAFSA is actually going to look at your family size or the number of individuals claimed on the parent's 2023 tax return. If your family size is different than the individuals claimed on your 2023 tax return, you can indicate yes and make changes to that. You can also click no and continue on if you know the individuals claimed is the same as your family size. And here it's going, right below the question is going to be a description of who to include in your family size. And I'm going to go ahead and add one more dependent and hit continue. So now the family size is 4. It's going to ask you the number of individuals in the parent's family who will be in college between July 1, 2025 and June 30th, 2026. You want to include the student here, but you do not want to include a parent. So if you're a parent completing a student's application, you would not include yourself in this count. Then go ahead and hit continue. Then you're going to go through and answer some tax return information. This is a situation where you're going to answer 0 if it does not apply, but you can go ahead and put this information in here. We're going to say 0 for this demonstration purpose only, and earned income credit, and go ahead and hit continue. You'll need to answer the questions based on your own situation. You're going to be asked the annual child support received, not the amount you paid, the amount you received as a parent. Even if it's not for the specific student you're completing the FAFSA, you're going to list your total child support received on behalf of your children. So we're going to go ahead and put in a figure here. And then here, you also will be asked the total of your cash savings and checking accounts. It's going to ask you the current net worth of investments, including real estate. You would not include the home where you live. It would just be any additional properties where you do not live. And the current net worth of businesses and investment farms. The text right below the request will give you some information on how to calculate that net worth for both questions. Now you're going to go ahead and review the answers. My recommendation is to always expand all and go through the answers provided. And hit continue once you confirm it's correct. Now you're certifying and signing that the information you provided is true and complete. Remember, this is a federal form and there could be penalties of up to $20,000 or imprisonment if you were purposefully giving false information or anything misleading. And then you attest or agree to the terms outlined above, and you can go ahead and sign and submit. Here is the final summary page that's on here. It's still listing you as the parent, and it'll let you know the form is complete. If you are a remarried FAFSA contributor completing the application for a dependent undergraduate student, and you and your spouse filed your taxes separately, You might be required to have your spouse complete the FAFSA as well on behalf of your child. If that's the case, both you and your spouse would have to complete their own FAFSA contributor application, which would look similar to yours. If you are an independent student, undergraduate or graduate, and you are married, you may have to invite your spouse to complete the FAFSA as well as a FAFSA contributor, especially if you filed your taxes separately. The FAFSA will help you determine that information, but of course, if you have any questions, you can always double check the information on studentaid.gov. Where you started the application at the very top, there's a FAFSA button, and that'll help you get to some information that's helpful. In addition, you can look at Edvisor's 2025-2026 FAFSA guide that helps you walk through some of the common issue areas or some common questions to help you through the FAFSA application. And that was the walkthrough of the 2025-2026 FAFSA. As we said, there might be some changes between now and when the FAFSA is officially released by December 1st. But that gives you an idea of what you can expect, the type of questions that you'll see. Make sure to check out edvisors.com, especially that blog where we keep you up to date with the latest information.